It was supposed to be just another quiet evening for Daniel Miller, a single dad who had long ago traded his own dreams for the safety of his little girl. The sun had barely set when he slipped the leash onto Max, his German shepherd, and began their usual walk down the wooded trail behind their small town. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the smell of pine needles and damp earth. Daniel loved these walks. They gave him time to think, to breathe, to remind himself that life, despite its hardships, was still beautiful. But that night something happened that would change his life forever, and leave an entire police department in awe. Before I take you deeper into this powerful story, please take a moment to like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Be Kind TV, because stories like this remind us that kindness and courage can change everything. Daniel's footsteps crunched over the path, Max pulling slightly ahead as usual. The trail was dimly lit, the tall trees blocking out what little light the moon offered. It was peaceful until Max suddenly froze. His ears perked, his body rigid, his growl low and cautious. Daniel frowned. Max was trained, disciplined, calm, and when he reacted like that, something was wrong. "Easy, boy," Daniel whispered, gripping the leash tighter. Then he heard it. A faint, strangled sound carried through the stillness, like someone gasping for air. His heart lurched. He followed the sound, Max pulling harder now, leading him toward the thick brush just off the trail. And there, barely visible in the shadows, Daniel saw her. A woman in a blood-stained uniform, sprawled against the base of a tree. Her hand was pressed weakly to her side where crimson seeped through her fingers. Her face was pale, her breath shallow, but her eyes, sharp, defiant, still clung to life. "Help, please," she whispered. Daniel dropped to his knees beside her, his heart pounding. "Hang on. You're going to be okay." Her uniform told him what she couldn't. She was a cop. A young one, probably in her late 20s. He didn't know her, but the badge on her chest told him she had sworn to protect this very town, and now she was dying in his arms. He pulled off his jacket and pressed it firmly against her wound. She winced but didn't cry out. "What happened?" he asked urgently. "Ambush," she coughed. "Drug house raid. They were waiting for us. I got separated." Her words trailed off, her eyelids fluttering. Daniel's pulse raced. He had no phone. He'd left it charging at home, never expecting danger on a simple walk. The trail was too deep in the woods for anyone to hear him yell. He was alone, except for Max. And that's when the father in him, the man who had once held his newborn daughter and sworn never to fail her, made a decision. He couldn't let this woman die here. "Max," he commanded, looking into the dog's intelligent eyes, "go home." "Fetch!" Max hesitated for a split second, then bolted down the trail. Daniel knew he'd race back to the house, bark until someone came, maybe even fetch Emma, his 12-year-old daughter. Max had been trained by Daniel's late wife, who'd been a canine handler before cancer stole her away. That dog wasn't just a pet, he was family, a partner. Tonight, he would prove it. Daniel turned his attention back to the officer, applying pressure to the wound as best as he could. "Stay with me," he urged. "Don't you dare give up." Her eyes fluttered open again, glassy with pain. Why are you helping me?" "Because," Daniel whispered, voice breaking, "if it were my daughter out here, I'd want someone to help her too." Minutes felt like hours. He talked to her to keep her conscious, asking her name, her story. Between shallow breaths, she told him her name was Officer Elena Ramirez. She joined the force after her younger brother overdosed on drugs, vowing to fight back against the poison killing her community. Tonight was supposed to be just another raid. Instead, she was left bleeding in the woods, wondering if her oath would cost her life. Finally, distant barking. Then voices, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Max came bounding back, leading Emma and a pair of joggers who had been passing near the trailhead. One of them had a phone and immediately called 911. Within minutes, the woods lit up with red and blue. Paramedics rushed to Elena's side, lifting her onto a stretcher. Daniel's jacket, soaked in her blood, was still pressed against her wound. One medic glanced at him with wide eyes. "If you hadn't kept pressure on it, she'd be gone. You saved her life." Daniel shook his head, still trembling. "No, we saved her life, me and Max." The ambulance roared away, leaving Daniel, Emma, and Max standing under the flashing lights. Emma slipped her hand into her father's. "Dad, you were like a hero tonight." Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt grateful. grateful that he could keep a promise, even if it wasn't his own daughter he was protecting. Days later, Daniel got a call. It was from the police chief himself, asking him to come down to the station. Nervous but curious, he agreed. When he arrived, the entire department was waiting, and in the front, wearing a bandage but standing tall, was Officer Elena Ramirez. She walked up to him slowly, tears in her eyes. Then, in front of her colleagues, she saluted him. "On behalf of the force, and on behalf of my family, thank you. You didn't just save me. You reminded us why we fight, why we serve." The room erupted in applause. Emma hugged Max, who barked proudly, his tail wagging. And Daniel, usually a man who lived quietly in the shadows, found himself in the spotlight, overwhelmed but deeply moved. Later, as Elena stood beside him, she whispered, "You didn't just save my life, you saved my faith. I was starting to wonder if this job was worth it. But now I know it is, because people like you still exist." Daniel didn't know what to say. He just nodded, his throat tight. Because deep down, he knew the truth. Sometimes heroes aren't the ones in uniforms, or the ones with titles. Sometimes heroes are just fathers who refuse to let someone else's child suffer, and dogs who know the way home. So remember, when life gives you the chance to help someone, take it. You never know when your small act of courage might mean the difference between life and death. Before I close, I want to remind you, if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Be Kind TV. It helps us continue sharing stories that prove kindness is stronger than hate, and courage lives in ordinary people like you. Because in the end, Daniel, Emma, and Max showed us all one thing: that kindness, courage, and love can ripple far beyond one night in the woods. And sometimes they can even shock an entire police force.